Good evening. My name is Carol Grom, and I am the Vice President and Voter Services Chair for the Elgin Area League of Women Voters. I want to welcome you to the Candidate Forum for the Democratic primary for Congressional Representative of the 8th District. This forum is jointly hosted by the 6 leagues that are within the 8th Congressional District. They are the League of Women Voters of Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, and Buffalo Grove, the League of Women Voters of Central King County, the League of Women Voters of the Elgin Area, the League of Women Voters of Glen Ellyn, the League of Women Voters of Palatine, and the League of Women Voters of Roselle-Bloomingdale. I want to thank the Gail Borden Library for allowing us to use their wonderful facility for this candidate forum. Thanks also to the library staff who are recording and live streaming this forum. A link to the recorded forum will be on the website of each sponsoring League of Women Voters, on the Illinois Voter Guide, and on the Gail Borden Library website. Tonight we'll be hearing from the 2 Democratic candidates for congressional representative of the 8th District, Junaid Ahmed and Raja Krishnamoorthi. Invitations were also extended to the Republican candidates, but only one, Philip Owen Wood, committed to attend, so the Republican forum was canceled. Candidate Chris Dargis declined the invitation due to a scheduling conflict, and the other 3, Chad Coppy, Karen Kaladziej, and Peter Kopsaftis, did not respond at all to the invitation or follow-ups. The winners of the 2 primaries on June 28th will face each other in the November 8th general election. Following the opening statements, the audience is invited to submit written questions on the cards provided. Please raise your hand if you wish to receive a blank index card or to have a question collected. The questions will be collected by League members and presented to the moderator. The League reserves the right to consolidate questions that are similar in content and to eliminate any questions that are inappropriate. If your question is not addressed and you would like a more detailed answer, please feel free to contact the candidates later for a response. We ask that you, the audience members, abide by the following rules. Please silence all cell phones and electronic devices. Please remain silent and seated during the forum. And please do not respond in any audible way to the candidates. This forum will be recorded and posted to the League of Women Voter Elgin Area YouTube channel, where it will be available for viewing via links on our website, lwvelginarea.org, and our Facebook page. It will also be available on the websites of the other sponsoring leagues and in the Illinois Voter Guide, which is produced by the League of Women Voters of Illinois. We are very fortunate tonight to have Jan Dorner as our moderator. Jan is a longtime member of the Elmhurst League of Women Voters and a past president of the Illinois League of Women Voters. In her many years of service, Jan has registered thousands of voters at local high schools and public libraries, and she has advocated tirelessly for informed voting by organizing and moderating local candidate forums. Please welcome our moderator, Jan Dorner. And please welcome our 2 candidates, Junaid Ahmed and Raja Krishnamoorthi.
Thank you, Carol. The League of Women Voters' purpose is to promote political responsibility through the informed and active participation of citizens in government. Providing this forum allows citizens to become better informed about the issues facing their community and to become better acquainted with the candidates running for office. We are happy to provide this service for the community. Questions have been collected from our members, the community before this forum, and this audience, and are screened for duplication, clarity, and appropriateness to the office being discussed. All questions should be written in order for both candidates so that they may answer it. The format tonight is a candidate forum, not a debate format. Candidates are expected to accurately represent the facts. The League of Women Voters is not responsible for the public, is not responsible for the accuracy of statements made by the candidates. It is the responsibility of the public, news media opposing candidates at all to fact-check statements made by candidates if deemed necessary. This forum is between the two candidates seeking to represent the Democrats for the 8th Congressional District in the U.S. House of Representatives in the November general election. These candidates have agreed to abide by the rules set forth prior to this forum, among them being that no voice, image, or other duplication of the forum may be used by any candidate's representative or campaign in any campaign advertising. Each candidate will present a 2-minute introductory statement. The order to start is alphabetical. Then questions will be asked, and each candidate will have up to 1 minute to respond in alternating order. Closing statements will be 2 minutes. There will be a timer present. And I will ask you to adhere to these time limits. When you see the stop sign, you may finish your sentence, but we ask you to conclude. So our candidates tonight are Junaid, Ahmed, and Raja Krishnamoorthi. So let's start with your 2-minute introductory statement. Candidate Ahmed.
Good evening. Thank you, League of Women Voters. I am so honored to be here today. My name is Junaid Ahmed. I'm the son of an immigrant, and I'm an immigrant myself. I saw my dad working 2 jobs and my mom working hard so I and my brothers and sisters could achieve the American dream. And I'm proud to share that I started my college education at the City College of Chicago, eventually earning an MBA from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. I am a husband, my wonderful wife Shireen here, father of 4 amazing children, and a small business owner. I have pretty much worked in this community for a very long time, whether it's volunteering as a big brother to the middle school and high school students, or delivering food to the homeless and the needy in our neighborhoods, or serving as this chairman of our Boy Scouts troop. I have organized rallies in support of universal health care, and I have lobbied the state government to shut down the ICE detention center. Also, I volunteered for the campaign of my opponent, Raja Krishnamoorthi, in 2016, because I believed at the time that the promises that were made, unfortunately, those promises were not delivered, and all we could see in the 6 years of his work was $13 million in the bank. $13 million, including millions from special interest corporations, you name it, from defense contractors, from big pharma and all that. When you take that kind of money, you're not going to be delivering and standing up and being able to fight for what is right for people. For all the talk about his record, which I am sure you will hear quite a bit about today, 2% success rate is what we are talking about. For all the talking points, the success rate we are dealing with here is 2%. Where in America is a success rate of 2% acceptable?
Thank you. Candidate, please hold your applause. Please hold your applause until the very end of this forum. Candidate Krishnamoorthi, your 2-minute introductory statement, please.
Thank you to the League for having us today. Thank you to all of you for attending. And thank you for the honor of allowing me to represent you in the United States Congress. It's the highest honor of my lifetime. The reason why I'm in Congress is because of my life story. I was born in India. I came to this country when I was 3 months old, and things were going great until suddenly they did not in the recession of 1973. But thanks to the incredible generosity and goodwill of the people of the United States and its government, we were allowed to move into public housing and food stamps when my family struggled. And thanks to the generosity of the American people, we were allowed to stay until my father could complete his studies. My parents are in the audience. until they could complete their studies and find an excellent job in, of all places, Peoria, Illinois. That's where we moved, and that's where the golden period of our lives began, because that's where we enter the middle class. And every night at the dinner table, my father would say, think of the greatness of this country. And whatever the two of you do, my brother and me, just make sure this country is there for the next families who need it. And so that became the North Star of my personal compass. Fast forward to today, that's become the mission statement of my office. People are struggling today. They're looking for someone who's going to fight on their side. So when e-cigarette companies came after your children, I went after the e-cigarette companies and helped to clear the shelves of flavored vapes. When toxic heavy metals were found in baby foods, I went after the food manufacturers, and now the FDA has adopted tough new standards for that. And when Johnson & Johnson sold carcinogenic baby powder, I helped to clear the shelves of those cancer-causing substances. But I'm not finished. I'm going after the oil and gas manufacturers as well as the food processors for hiking prices and price gouging us. I know they'll come after me, but that's okay. I'm with you because my first allegiance is to you.
Thank you. Will each candidate please move their Would each candidate please move their microphone a little closer? Thank you. Candidate Ahmed, your first question is, would you support legislation to ensure women's control of her health care, including the legal right to abortion services free from burdensome and other medically unnecessary restrictions? You have 1 minute.
Yes, and if you check out my website, even before Politico released the court's, the documents regarding Roe versus Wade, we had called us out that we are failing women in America. I fully support their right over their body. I think it is time for us to codify Roe. It is time for us to pass the Paycheck Fairness Act, and it is time for us. Why have we not authorized the Violence Against Women Act? Not just the reproductive rights. They need full control over their bodies and on their choices. It's a very simple question to me as a father of 3 girls. I cannot tell you how strongly I would support anything that would go regarding the laws for the women. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Krishnamoorthi, same question.
No member of Congress or the Supreme Court should stand between a woman and her health care provider with regard to her body. I'm proud of my 100% pro-choice record in Congress. That's why I'm the only candidate in this race that's been endorsed by Planned Parenthood. I voted multiple times to codify Roe into law, including through the Women's Health Protection Act. But it's time, folks, not to agonize, it's time to organize. We must organize to make sure that every candidate for office and every elected official is held accountable for their position on this particular issue, because at this point, it's all about whether a woman can control her body and whether anybody is entitled to the fundamental privacies associated to that most important decision. So I'm 100% behind women and all people with regard to this issue.
Thank you. Please refrain from applause. We're not doing a political rally. We are doing a candidate forum. If you would like to continue with this candidate forum, I will ask you to please refrain from applauding. Candidate Krishnamoorthi, what level of engagement with the global community should the U.S. maintain, and when should the U.S. troops be used in global conflicts?
Well, thank you for the question. I'm a member of the U.S. House of Representatives Select Committee on Intelligence. This particular committee is charged with our national security, and I take that responsibility extremely seriously. We are not the world's policemen, and I'm very glad that we have pulled out of Afghanistan. We cannot engage in endless wars. On the other hand, Where democracy and freedom and human rights and our values are at stake, we must be in the fight, and that's what's happening in Ukraine. I'm honored to have been part of the efforts to send armaments and other aid to the Ukrainian people who are fiercely and courageously defending themselves against Russian aggression. For this, I'm proud that I have been banned from Russia by Vladimir Putin. I wear that as a badge of honor and an indication that I am in the right on this issue.
Thank you. Candidate Ahmed, same question.
We should use our economic might to the fullest. Ukraine situation tells us that when we need to support them in whatever means through the weapons and the financial support that we're providing, and I support President Biden for that. But in the long run, what America needs to do is to use its economic might. As a first-generation American, as someone who has traveled the globe quite a bit, I can tell you that we carry a lot of power with our economic might. If we tell the world that if you do not play right, if you do not treat human rights as a single standard of human rights, if you do not treat your people well, we are going to be using our economic might and our economic power to have implications on your country. We do that in the long run, the world will be a better place.
Thank you. Candidate Ahmed, what specific regulations will you propose to help curb global warming and other environmental issues?
Look, when it comes to environment, the climate crisis is an existential threat to all of us. We need a compassionate transition to a green energy. What we need is to create that would create millions of high-paying union jobs. It would achieve energy independence. It would free ourselves from, high gas prices that we're dealing with today. What we need to do is we need to have policies that are going to save this existential threat of global warming, the place that we are going to leave for our children. If we do not take action right now, we will never have a better place. And the biggest reason we have failed to take action is because a lot of politicians are taking money from oil and gas lobbies. A lot of money is into play in our political system, including my opponent, Mr. Krishnamoorthi here, has taken hundreds of thousands, 2 million plus when you include all of the special interest money. When you have that kind of money, you cannot really fight for saving the planet.
Thank you. Candidate Krishnamoorthi, same question.
Well, first of all, climate change is man-made, it's real, and it's an existential threat. We absolutely have to do everything we can to fight it. I'm proud to be the founder and the chair of the Bipartisan Solar Caucus. And this particular caucus has actually passed legislation that's made it into law. We've invested more money through this caucus in research and development in solar. We've actually expanded solar usage on military bases. And we have also managed to lower soft costs to make sure that all of us can go solar. Those are the regulatory and other impediments that stand in our way. I'm proud that because of my record, I am the only candidate in this race to have been endorsed by the Sierra Club, the premier grassroots movement for fighting climate change in America. With regard to oil and gas, I would just point out that, sir, you have consulted for BP oil and gas to the tune of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you've received money from executives of oil and gas. So I think you can say one thing, but you're doing another.
Thank you. The library wants to announce that there is an overflow room upstairs for those of you standing in the back. Candidate Krishnamoorthi, what realistic measures do you support to curb the violence while recognizing the Second Amendment rights?
Thank you. After Uvalde, after Buffalo, after Tulsa, after Newtown, and all the other massacres at this point, our hearts are with the families, but thoughts and prayers are not enough. We must take action, and we must take action now. I'm proud that I have been an original sponsor of our background checks bill, which absolutely has to pass. It receives 90% support of gun owners, let alone other individuals in America. We have to raise the age for the purchase of automatic weapons. We have to make sure that we limit the accessibility of high-capacity magazines. For all of this, I have earned an F rating from the NRA. And like being banned from Russia, I wear that with a badge of honor. We need to reform and end the filibuster with regard to these particular bills because they have unfortunately been passed out of the House and they're in the Senate and we need to bring them to a vote.
Thank you. Candidate Ahmed, same question.
First, before I answer this one, I think the Congressman just said about my consulting services to BP. I gave my 40 hours of service and I got X amount of money back. And I am proud to say that I sold my technology consulting services to BP and I got paid for that. Congressman, what have you done? What do you give back to this industry when you take this hundreds of thousands, if not millions from them? What do you give back to them is my question to you, because I am very open and honest and transparent as to what I do. As far as guns go, we must ban bump stocks. We must ban ghost guns. On that day of the shooting in Texas, I dropped my daughter at the school. She kissed me goodbye. When I heard this news, I could not imagine not seeing my daughter that night. How would have those parents, those 18, 19 parents must have felt on that day when they were not able to see their kids back? I had to pull over and I literally cried. I think as a legislators, we have to make sure that this crazy madness of gun violence stops.
Thank you. Candidate Ahmed, what steps will you take to reform current immigration policies?
Look, immigration, our system has been broken for a long time. We had fixes step by step. During Reagan, we had an amnesty program. After that, President Obama tried to have a Dreamers Act. So these are all short-term fixes that we had. What we need is a permanent immigration reform. And I will tell you this, our Social Security system, as it stands today, is set to expire 12 years from now. The checks that our seniors would get in 12 years is not going to be the same amount of check that they will be expected to get. You may not expect to hear this answer, but immigration may be the solution to fix that Social Security problem. And we have to have this, we have to have a full solution, an immigration reform to solve the Social Security problem. That is our fundamental answer to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Krishnamoorthi, same question.
Folks, we're a nation of laws, but we're also a nation of immigrants. I'm proud to say I'm one of those immigrants. I'm one of the few naturalized citizens in Congress, so this becomes a personal issue to me. I am the original author or co-sponsor of every major immigration bill in Congress, whether it is for the long-term undocumented who have staked roots in this country, whether it's for dreamers, whether it's for H-1B workers or whether it's for documented dreamers. With regard to H-1B and high-skilled workers, the other day I met a man who has been here for 15 years, doesn't have his green card. I asked him, how long is it till you get your green card? He said, another 15 years. I said, what's your plan B if I can't get my legislation passed? He said, I've got a daughter there, she's 4, and in 14 years, she'll be able to sponsor me for a green card. That's not a solution. We must pass comprehensive immigration reform right now, and I look forward to doing that.
Thank you. Candidate Krishnamoorthi, please share your thoughts on the future of Social Security and Medicare.
Thank you. I believe that Social Security and Medicare is a sacred trust. We must keep our promises to all those who have organized their lives around receiving Social Security and Medicare. I believe that what we have to do with regard to Social Security is we have to lift the cap on earnings that are subject to taxation. Currently, the cap's at $147,000, and that's too low given the proportion of our population that earns a lot more than that and doesn't pay taxes on that amount. And so that we have to have more revenues coming into Social Security because in 12 years, unfortunately, actuarially, we'll be running out of funds in the trust fund to pay 100% of benefits. But we need to do more. In Medicare, we have to lower the costs. So I'm proud to be the original sponsor of legislation to finally allow the government to negotiate the price of prescription drugs under Medicare and for all of us. That's why I've earned a 100% voting record from the National Committee to Protect and Preserve Social Security and Medicare.
Thank you. Candidate Ahmed, same question.
Look, for our Medicare, we need to make sure that we include dental, vision, and hearing. And I'm not trying to be funny here, but we need our ears, teeth, and eyes. We just need them. And why is it so difficult for Congress to act on it? You know why? Because of the hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars that our representatives currently take from the healthcare industry, from the big pharma. Because of the special interest money, we do not have solutions. For all the problems that we have, you will see a common thread. That common thread is the special interest money in our political system. Washington, D.C. is broken. You will hear today problem after problem after problem that will tie back to the special interest money. I think it is about time. It is about time for the 8th District of Illinois to stand up and say that we are going to choose a representative who is going to take an oath of not taking any special interest money. Enough is enough. No more special interest money in our politics. We need honest representatives.
Candidate Ahmed, what actions do you recommend for getting control of inflation?
Inflation. Inflation. You know, I filled up my gas here on the way, $5.25. These high prices are killing us. We need, and this is price gouging, and yes, there is certain issues that, yes, the Ukraine war has some impact, the supply chain impact. My 9-year-old is asking me, Daddy, what is supply chain? And I you know, because I'm a supply chain guy, I kind of took some time to explain to her. But look, the price gouging that this nation is facing today has never been seen before. Why are we not holding the companies accountable for all the price gouging? When the gas companies are doing this price gouging, we are saying absolutely nothing to them. If anything, it will be some empty words. What needs to happen is we need representation who is going to hold them accountable so the citizens of this nation do not pay crazy money for the profits of big billionaires. And we need representatives who are not taking money from them to actually make that happen.
Thank you. Candidate Krishnamoorthi.
Gas and grocery prices are way too high. You know this. I mean, if you go to the gas pump, it costs $50 to $100 to fill up your tank. That doesn't make any sense. Grocery prices are too high as well. Meat prices are going up by double digits at this time. I think we have to do a few things. First of all, I'm proud that we passed an infrastructure bill on a bipartisan basis in the fall, but now we have to direct that infrastructure spending toward unwinding bottlenecks at ports and other places that prevent goods from getting to the market as quickly as it should. When you have a scarcity of goods, unfortunately, prices go up. I'm proud that as part of my oversight committee, where I'm the chair of the subcommittee on consumer policy, I'm leading the price gouging investigations right now, especially with regard to oil and gas and meat processing, where unfortunately 90% of meat processing is concentrated in 4 companies, and I will continue that. With regard to special interest money, my opponent takes tens of thousands of dollars from precisely people in those industries that he complains about. He says one thing and does another.
Thank you. Candidate Krishnamoorthi, what are your thoughts on government regulation of social media?
I should be very careful because my 17-year-old is in the audience today. So I'll be cautious about what I say about social media. But unfortunately, social media is both a plus and a minus in our society. On the one hand, it connects us, and that's a good thing. But on the other hand, it's a medium where disinformation and other forms of false information quickly spreads and can really infect our democracy. We saw that in 2016, where the Russians effectively used social media to interfere in our 2016 elections. Now, what I believe that we have to do is we have to finally regulate big tech. Big tech, so far, has gotten a pass. So they are not liable for the content of their platforms. They are treated almost like community bulletin boards as opposed to publishing platforms. I believe that they can no longer escape that liability, and I think we should repeal that liability if they don't regulate themselves.
Thank you. Candidate Ahmed.
You know, before I respond, again, I have to respond to the congressman. I am very proud to share that I give 40 hours of service to these industries. I'm proud to share what I worked, and I'm proud to share what they gave me in return. Congressman, what have you gotten in return for the millions of dollars? That's my question to you. But from a social from a social media perspective, I'm a technology guy. So I appreciate the social media. I appreciate the technological benefits to it. I think what needs to happen, as a father of 4 kids, they're spending quite a bit of time that I'm sure all of our children, parents here can relate to. I would, taking a break from the political answer, I would like to find answers how I can find a solution where I can find my kids spending time on social media, that their time is positive and they're not having a negative impact. Unfortunately, radicalization that's happening using social media is one of the things that really bothers me.
Candidate Ahmed, what measures do you support to improve and secure voting rights in our country?
You know, first off, thank goodness we live in the state of Illinois. We have fairly good voting rights. I think what needs to happen is we need to have HR 1 pass. We need HR 4. We just basically need across the nation to have laws that is going to not suppress any voting rights. We are dealing with a situation where a party, unfortunately, is trying hard to make sure that the voice of the people is suppressed. Because we don't feel it, we cannot take it lightly. I am going to be fighting for HR 1. I'm going to be fighting for HR 4 and make sure that people across the nation, citizens across the nation, are able to cast their vote without any suppression fears. Thank you.
And Candidate Krishnamoorthi.
Well, first of all, I want to make it very clear. Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. The voting was fair and square, and Joe Biden won the presidency. I just want to make that very clear before people start to monkey around with our voting laws in search of, quote-unquote, widespread fraud. There is not widespread fraud in our current system. But, unfortunately, a lot of states are still restricting voting rights. That's why I'm proud to be an original sponsor of HR 1, which would allow for automatic voter registration, loosen the restrictive voter ID laws that are out there, make sure that there's early voting for everybody, and that universal mail-in balloting is available to everybody. These are key. Also, HR 4, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, is important to prevent discriminatory changes to our voting rights laws. This is personal to me because John Lewis was a mentor to me. I worked with him and he campaigned for me here in Chicago. I will always live up to his example.
Thank you. Candidate Krishnamoorthi, what is your strategy for influencing others to support your views if elected?
I think the best way to influence others' views if I'm elected is to continue doing what I'm doing right now in Congress, which is trying to maintain a principled position on the issues while at the same time having a civil discourse with others who disagree with me. I think that there's hyper-partisanship in Washington, D.C., and there's a lack of civility. I've tried to observe that old rule, which is you can disagree without being disagreeable. And so to that end, I've managed to pass bipartisan legislation into law to help stop Juul from targeting our youth with their e-cigarettes, to strengthen skills-based education for 11 million more people annually, and to help combat the Russians who are continually preying on us and trying to interfere in our democracy. I've also tried to hold joint town hall meetings with Darren LaHood, the congressman from my hometown of Peoria, just to show people that although we disagree on so many issues, we can still do it in a civil fashion.
Candidate Ahmed.
I'll share an experience several years ago. I was, as you all know, I'm a small business owner. I was at a client site, as a congressman called out several times here. I was at a client site, and the project was supposed to go live 2 weekends from the day we were having the meeting. And in that meeting, there were about 5 or 6 VPs, except one. All of them were against it. And these are, pretty high influential people. I'm the outside consultant sitting there. And when you have 5 out of 6 against you, everybody is thinking we're not going anywhere with this. Literally 45 minutes, an hour later, 5 out of those 6 have agreed, and only once gave me the time for another 3 days to bring her back the solutions. And after the meeting, Ron Castro was in the meeting. He came up to me and said, John and I were texting during the meeting and said, if God forbid, if this country ever sees a critical situation, you are the man to solve the problem, to be the negotiator. And that's something I am proud of, and I will be negotiating to the best of the ability in Congress.
Thank you. Candidate Ahmed, do you support paying off some amount of college loans? If so, where will the money come from to pay for it?
Yes, I fully support paying off the college debt. Look, the reason we have our 20-somethings, 30-somethings, and my wife's college tuition, we paid off later part of 2020. The college debt is bogging down the economy right now. The college debt is bogging down our 20-somethings, 30-somethings, now unfortunately 40-somethings. It is having an impact on home ownership. It is having an impact on people having the ability to start a family life. I think when you take that debt, that burden away from the people, it is going to have an overall positive impact that it will pay itself back. The impact that the student debt is having on the growth of this nation is something that we have to address, and we have to address that in a hurry. Because when you can find billions of dollars to bail out the Wall Street, when you can find billions and billions of dollars to give to the oil and gas and fossil fuel industry, I think you can give a student debt relief so the economy, that people can actually breathe and live.
Thank you. Candidate Krishnamoorthi.
Well, I think that student debt is a huge albatross around our necks as an economy. It prevents young people from starting a household, getting married, buying a home, or even starting a business. There's $1.5 trillion of student debt right now. I'm proud that in Congress, I helped to lead the way with Elizabeth Warren in the Senate to investigate especially for-profit entities that really committed fraud against a lot of our students, and in the process put a lot of debt around their necks and got them nothing in return. One of those institutions was the Corinthian Institution, and yesterday, thankfully, although Donald Trump didn't listen to Elizabeth Warren and me, Joe Biden did. And so they are forgiving billions and billions of dollars of that student debt thanks to our investigative work. But we need to do more. We need to give student debt relief to more people than just those victims, and I'm committed to that.
Thank you. Candidate Krishnamoorthi, how do you see the recently signed Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act specifically impacting the 8th District?
Well, I'm proud of this act. This is one of those rare instances where Republicans and Democrats actually came together and put an infrastructure deal that has been 50 years in the making. It's going to repair roads and bridges. We're going to finally have an EV charging network that will encourage more people to buy electric vehicles. And we will also invest in mass transit and other ways to combat climate change. With regard to the 8th Congressional District, my pet project, for some of you who know about our priorities, is the Elgin O'Hare Expressway. This is the expressway that neither reaches Elgin nor O'Hare. It's the ultimate aspirationally named piece of infrastructure. And so I have been leading the charge with the tollway as well as IDOT and of course the federal authorities to finally connect the two. And thanks to our work, we finally are punching through the western part of O'Hare, and I'm looking forward to more progress.
Thank you. Candidate Ahmed?
Elgin O'Hare Expressway, that's a tollway. If the money is coming from the infrastructure bill, why is it a tollway? Is that really a credit worth taking? I don't think so. Because if it is coming from the infrastructure bill, then it should not be a tollway. It is a tollway to pay off for the cost that is coming through. So I think we are back to the 2% success rate here. We are taking credit for things that may not necessarily, deserve taking credit for. We had Elk Grove Village that was a manufacturing hub, back in the day. We see so many jobs being taken away. I think there is a lot more that can be done, that should be done, that must be done to bring jobs back to the 8th District.
Thank you. Candidate Ahmed, what is your position on trauma-focused care in mental health treatment and ensuring equitable and fair availability of mental health services?
This is very dear to my heart, I and my wife, as we were going through the last few years of our lives. She is actually taking time away from her work to go back to school to study psychology. She is pursuing her master's in clinical psychology, and I'm very proud of her, how close to her heart that is to help people with mental illness. Mental health care should be part of our healthcare system today. It should be part of the universal healthcare program that we must have. And when you have all of these special interest money coming into the system, instead of fighting to solve the mental health care issues, instead of really fighting to make sure that we treat, just like a physical disability, you treat the mental disability the same thing, the mental issues the same thing. When you have high blood pressure, when you have diabetes, you go to the doctor and take care of things. Why not? Why do we not cover mental illnesses? We must.
Candidate Krishnamoorthi.
I think that mental health is every bit as important as physical health, but we don't treat it as such, especially in the way that it's stigmatized, as well as the way it's reimbursed. And so this has become a priority for me, especially because one group of people who've suffered a great mental toll are healthcare workers. My wife, who's a physician, she's an anesthesiologist. The joke is that we both put people to sleep. And she intubated these patients during the pandemic, for the entirety of the pandemic. And I saw the toll it took on her, as well as nurses and doctors and other healthcare professionals through the whole ordeal. Because of that, and because unfortunately physicians suffer a higher depression rate as well as suicide rate compared to the rest of the population, I and Senator Tim Kane authored the Dr. Lorna Breen Act, which establishes for the first time mental health care resources for all healthcare professionals in this country. I'm proud of that. Thank you.
Candidate Krishnamoorthi, as long as we're talking about healthcare, can you describe your ideal healthcare plan for the country?
Thank you. This is one of those issues that, unfortunately, we had to deal with on day one when I came into office in 2017, because Republicans tried to repeal Obamacare repeatedly when I came in. I'm proud to have stood strong in repelling every single attempt to repeal Obamacare, but we've had to do more. I believe that health care is a human right. I believe it's not a privilege, but a human right, and universal health care is absolutely crucial. That's why I'm a proud sponsor of legislation to add a public option to the exchanges, to bring down the cost of all health insurance, to expand Medicare eligibility, and to bring down the cost of prescription drugs, finally. I have authored legislation not only to allow the federal government to negotiate the price of prescription drugs under Medicare, but for all citizens. And I intend to see that through, because we can't have a situation where people are deciding between their prescription drugs and their rent and other necessities.
Candidate Ahmed.
I heard the same promise, and one of the reasons I volunteered for Congressman's campaign in 2016 was because of his promise to treat healthcare as a basic human right. We have not seen any action on that. I believe healthcare is a basic human right. America spends the most per person in healthcare than any other nation in the world. Still, we have 50% of Americans who are either uninsured or underinsured. I myself thought I had the best insurance in the world. When my son had to be in the hospital for a few days, my bill came to close to $10,000. That's a heck lot of money. What we need is a universal health care system where people do not lose their health insurance just as when they lose their job. What we need is a universal health care system that is affordable, that spends more money on patients than administrators, that cares for everyone except Big Pharma. Because you know what? I am not going to take a dime of their money. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Ahmed, what can be done to increase school safety?
It takes us back. It takes us back to taking guns off the hands of minors. It takes us back to taking guns, semi-automatics off the street. I think an 18-year-old walking into a school and shooting, we can come with all the policies that you want, and so I want to lock the doors this way, I want to create these, but until we take guns out, until we take guns away from the people, semi-automatics, for the machines, for mass killing, we're not going to have a solution. See, what's going on is NRA is working hard to lobby against the gun reform because they are investing millions and millions of dollars in the system because of the same broken system that my incumbent here is raising all that money, getting all the money from special interests. Within the same broken system, the NRA is investing their money to stop gun reform. That must stop.
Candidate Krishnamoorthi.
Wow, I think I just got accused of somehow supporting the NRA's agenda. I've never received a dime from the NRA, and I have an F rating from the NRA.
Not NRA, sir, special interest money.
Well, look, my opponent who just interrupted me made me point out that he has received tens of thousands of dollars from employees of pharmaceutical companies. It's not proper to say one thing and do another. With regard to school safety, the reason why the Illinois Federation of Teachers and the Illinois Education Association have only endorsed me in this race is because I've stood strong with teachers in saying we should not arm teachers. We should make sure that arms don't flow into classrooms. And that's why it's so important that we pursue the legislation that controls guns in a common sense way. And that is what I intend to do, and that is what we have to do if we're to get past this problem.
Candidate Krishnamoorthi, how should the U.S. handle the shipping of onshore oil? Should it go into OPEC for price control?
Well, I think that with regard to oil, unfortunately, OPEC controls the market. And the Russians had 10% of the market before we, fortunately, thanks to legislation that I co-sponsored and voted for, banned the importation of oil. But what this really points to, folks, is too much dependence on fossil fuels. We have to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels if we are both going to avoid depending on Russia and other adversaries for our energy needs, but also to combat climate change. And so that's why I'm so proud to be the co-chair of the Power Sector Task Force in Congress to help to make sure we upgrade the grids to bring more renewables online. I'm proud of my work as the co-chair of the Solar Caucus, there with Ralph Norman, someone who couldn't be more different than me. He is a conservative Republican from South Carolina. I'm not. He's a member of the Freedom Caucus. I'm not. And he's a Ralph, and I'm not.
Candidate Ahmed.
I want the room to listen to me in earnest. And if you're watching at home, I want you to listen in earnest. What Congressman Krishnamoorthi is trying to do here is to mislead you and take you away from the special interest money in politics. What he's trying to compare is someone who is working a 9-to-5 job to feed their family. If they were to give me a $500 campaign contribution or a $2,000 or a $20 or a $27 or $2,900 for that matter, any amount, he is comparing that. Listen to me in earnest. He is comparing a 9-to-5 job to the campaign contribution, the special interest campaign contributions, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, coming to politicians. That is corruption at its height. And this is where Congressman is trying to make that comparison. I want you to pay attention to that. That is not it is not an apples to apples comparison. It is someone working their 9-to-5 job as opposed to campaign contribution.
Candidate Ahmed, can you please explain your top priority and why it is so important, and what can you do in Congress about it if elected?
If I haven't said it enough times, my top priority is to fix DC. And I know that's a bold statement I make here, and I'm making it very, very carefully. I think what is happening across the nation is we have representatives who is taking millions of dollars from special interests, and instead of serving the interests of the people, they will serve the interests of the people when it is convenient for them, when they need the bragging rights. Or of course, everybody walks in with some good intentions, and they will be serving the people to a certain extent. But when that hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars come from the fossil fuel industry, you are going to quietly, what happens behind the scenes we don't know, but the millions of dollars that are coming in, they are going to work. And instead of standing up for what is right for people, our representatives are, standing up for what is right for the special interest. That would be my first thing. What would I do in Congress for that? I will be fighting for campaign finance reform.
Thank you. Candidate Krishnamoorthi.
I think that we have to change the discourse in Washington. I think there's too much anger and vitriol, and unfortunately we see that even in my opponent, in the way that he talks and the way that he treats these issues. That anger and vitriol does not help with solving any problems. It just creates more fire and fuel. That's what was the problem with the Trump presidency. Just a week ago, unfortunately, we saw some of that anger and vitriol from my opponent's campaign spill over onto me. You see, he promoted a protest in front of my congressional office by a gentleman named Peter Friedrich. Friedrich came in front of my office, an anti-gay, anti-abortion activist, and started leading chants. The first chant was, "Nazis out, Raja must go." And it concluded with, "Death to Krishnamoorthi." This is completely unacceptable. And that's the problem with our politics right now.
Thank you. Candidate Krishnamoorthi. In that this is Pride Month, what would you do to support and protect transgender people? Candidate Krishnamoorthi. In
First
that
of all,
this is Pride Month, what would you do to support and protect transgender people?
First of all, happy Pride Month to everybody. I am so honored to be a vice chair of the LGBTQ caucus in Congress, and I believe that for too long, unfortunately, LGBTQ people have been treated as second-class citizens, and that can no longer happen. We have to make sure that we don't have a situation where they are mistreated. And now that we've seen what's potentially going to happen with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, we could see an attack on gay marriage, which has flowed from the Roe v. Wade decision. And so we have to do everything we can to make sure that they are treated just as anyone else. I have initiated legislation in my office to combat bullying of LGBTQ people, because this is something that happens at the youngest ages, and we have to combat it in the schools at the youngest ages. I look forward to hopefully passing this in the next Congress as well.
Candidate Ahmed.
Congressman just, said I was angry, and you know what? I'm going to be honest. I'm a little bit angry because when I worked so hard to elect the congressman in 2016. My niece and I knocked doors for the congressman because he was standing because we believed in his promises. He did not deliver. So I am a little bit angry there. I've hoisted flags when Congressman had his events as the chairman of the Boy Scouts. So I'm a little bit angry that the congressman has not delivered. Instead of representing me, Congressman has been representing the special interest. Happy Pride Month. My take on that, I'll just say it very quickly. We've experienced discrimination, after 9/11 that, it was tough. It was some tough days. I would not want anybody else. I would not want anybody else to face that same discrimination. So I will be fighting. I will be fighting for LGBTQ rights and to make sure that they do not face any discrimination, not today, not tomorrow, never.
Thank you. Candidate Ahmed, what is your position on screening donors to your campaign?
What is my position on screening donors?
On screening donors to your campaign.
So how do I screen the donors?
Mm-hmm. What is your position on screening donors to your campaign?
What we do is, obviously we're getting hundreds now, thousands of contributions. What we do is we will do certain audit at times. To be very honest, in the last several weeks, several months, the campaign has been crazy busy. If we do find any questionable contribution coming to our campaign, we will return it. We don't know of any questionable contribution at this point. If we find anything, we will return it.
Candidate Krishnamoorthi.
I definitely think we should screen donors to Junaid's campaign. I'm just kidding. We do screen donations to my campaign, in particular because we have so many issues that we are working on, and we don't want to create conflicts of interest. And in some cases, we've just had to turn away donors or refund donations in the future. But going back to something that Mr. Ahmed said with regard to anger, it's one thing to be angry, but you can't promote people who would utter the chant, "Death to Krishnamoorthi." You just can't. That is toxic to our political discourse in this country, and we can't go down that road. We have to unite as Muslims and Hindus and Christians and Jews and Sikhs. We have to, for the sake of our children and for the sake of our country. We went down a dark road during the Trump years. I don't want to go back.
Candidate Krishnamoorthi, what are your views on reducing global terrorism?
Well, I think that we absolutely have to join with our allies and partners around the world in combating terrorism wherever it emerges. And I'm glad that we have managed in the post-9/11 era to reduce the incidence of terrorism in the homeland. However, there has been a cost, and that has also involved a cost to our civil rights and civil liberties. And it's also involved sometimes stereotyping people. When Donald Trump came into office, he enacted Muslim Ban 1.0. And then there was a Muslim Ban 2.0 and a 3.0. I'm proud to have been the first member of Congress to go to O'Hare to help free a couple dozen Muslim green card holders who were detained illegally and unlawfully at O'Hare Airport. And I tried to stand with the community ever since. But there are other communities that are facing phobias as well, and we have to stand with them too.
Candidate Ahmed.
First, Congressman, you just mentioned multiple times that I promote debt to Krishnamoorthi. I've never heard that before. I do not support it. I do not condone it. This is the first time I'm hearing it, by the way, so I have no idea what you're talking about. So with that, to combat global terrorism, I kind of, for extremism, we talked about social media and how people are, just locally as well as globally, where youth are being converted, to extremism. But one thing I will bring up here is having a single standard of human rights across the globe. When you promote that as the global leader, when we, America, promote that, we are going to have a nation where there is going to be very little extremism coming out. And that's where I think Congressman Krishnamoorthi's support, I call him out for his support to the right-wing government in India, which is causing a lot of oppression on the minorities in India.
Candidate Ahmed, can you please speak on what you plan on doing to stem sexual trafficking?
That's a very specific question. For sexual trafficking, first off, I think it is unfortunate that in 2022 we're still talking about people being trafficked here in the United States of America from other parts of the world. I think what needs to happen first is the people who are committing these heinous crimes, they need to be bring to account. They need to be bring to account in a very, very severe manner, because when you have a minor sexually trafficked, when they have no rights, when they're fearful to come out and even claim, that is happening here in the United States of America. That is completely unacceptable. What I would do is I would pass legislations to come up with laws that will stop, and nobody would dare to do that again. I think that because when you have a 9-year-old, when you have a 15-year-old who is scared, who is being trafficked and sexually, acting as a predator, it's just unacceptable. We got to stop that, and as a congressman, I'd fight for it.
Thank you. Candidate Krishnamoorthi.
I think that sex trafficking is happening, and it's happening in part because of social media. We know that there are sites online that cater to this type of trade, and we have to do everything we can to stop it in its tracks. I'm glad that as chair of the Oversight Subcommittee on Consumer Policy, we were able to shut down the operations of some websites that it engaged in this particular heinous type of activity. But we need to be on the alert, and we need to work with our partners globally, not just here, to continue this fight. Mr. Ahmed, this death to Krishnamoorthi chant and Nazis out, Raja go home is on video. We'll be sharing that with you. But this type of violent extremist rhetoric is completely unacceptable, and we have to condemn it for the sake of our children.
I will condemn it. If that's true, I completely condemn. Nobody can say that to Krishnamoorthi or anybody.
We've had 21 questions. We've done lots of different issues, but let's finish up with what changes need to be made to reinvigorate voters and local politics. Candidate Krishnamoorthi.
Well, I think that there's this old saying in Washington, D.C., which is, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. And there are too many people on the menu right now. And the main reason is because they're not involved in politics, they're not engaged, they're not able to advocate for themselves and have others who do the same. So one of the things I say to young people, as well as everybody, is I'd like you to do 3 things. First, we got to vote. A lot of us in this room know people who like to talk politics, but they don't do politics, which is voting. Second thing is we have to get in causes bigger than ourselves, get involved in causes that are bigger than ourselves. In a lot of our communities, we may be donating to our temples or our mosques or our synagogues or our churches, but we don't necessarily engage in political causes that are bigger than ourselves. And then the third thing is it's time to run for office. I hope everybody considers running for office, whether it's state house, state senate, city council, or Congress, although please not in my congressional district.
And Candidate Ahmed.
You know, as I am going around talking to the constituents of the 8th District, the biggest thing that I'm hearing from people is their discontentment, their lack of trust in the political process. They're saying, it doesn't matter. I mean, we heard all these things before. Somebody else is going to come. You're going to say the same thing. Somebody else said it before. It will happen again. I think that is a shame to our democracy. When you hear, not from one, but every second door that you knock, that is exactly what you're hearing. That is pretty sad for our democracy. And I think what we need is representatives who is going to stand up for what is right for people. When you take that special interest out of the equation, when you stand up and constantly fight for what is right for the people, you become their voice. Not come to them when you only need their votes. Be with them. Have a mechanism to stay in touch with your constituents. That is what the people of the 8th District need.
Thank you. Candidate Krishnamoorthi, could you please give us your 2-minute closing statement?
Well, thank you very much to the League. Thank you to all of you for attending tonight, taking precious time out of your busy schedules. You know, we've discussed in detail my voting record, as well as legislation that we've passed and got signed into law to help average, ordinary people. Whether it's our law, the law that I co-authored to strengthen our career and technical education system to help 11 million people get a higher quality skills-based education. Whether it's the Dr. Lorna Breen Act, named after Lorna Breen, who committed suicide in New York City during the pandemic, and for whom I authored a law to establish mental health resources for all of our healthcare heroes throughout the country. Or whether it's the law that I authored to close the synthetic nicotine loophole so that the FDA can finally regulate synthetic nicotine and keep that poison out of our young people's systems. That's why I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club, by Planned Parenthood, by the teachers, by every unit of organized labor, and by numerous local elected officials. One of them is in this room. Mayor Dave Captain, are you still here? Can you please stand? Mayor Captain has been a fine leader of Elgin, one of the most wonderful local leaders we have, and he just endorsed me. Why? Because he recognizes what it takes to be a leader. And I work very well with him and the 30 to 40 other mayors of towns and villages in this district. I've been attacked for receiving donations from employees of corporations. Never mind that my opponent has done exactly the same thing, but I've stood up to the special interests repeatedly. I go after them and they come after me. One thing that we have to avoid is violent extremist rhetoric. We cannot tolerate that, and unfortunately, the type of politics that my opponent represents is lending itself to that. When Peter Friedrich, an anti-gay, anti-abortion opponent, comes into the district and shouts, "Death to Krishnamoorthi," that's a bad thing.
Thank you. Candidate Ahmed, your 2-minute closing statement.
Friends, we have a clear choice to make here today. On one side, you have someone who has chosen to stand with special interest, and he has taken over $2 million, not from employees. Employees is something completely different, from the PACs, the political action committees of Big Pharma, defense contractors, fossil fuel industry. Again, I repeat, not the employees, but the PACs. And on the other side, you have someone who has served all his adult life serving the people. I have taken an oath to not accept a dime of corporate PAC money, not a dime of corporate PAC money. And, I will not be answerable to those special interests. I'll be answerable to you. Make no mistake, this race is about that. As much as we are trying to, kind of deviate it, this race is about special interests versus the interest of the people. Let us show to my opponent, the richest person in the House, let us show to his corporate backers that the people's power is much more stronger than the special interest power. Congressman, you may not realize this, but somewhere over the last 6 years, you have lost your way. We sent you to DC to stop big corporations from corrupting the American democracy, the beautiful democracy that we have. Not work for them. Unfortunately, you have chosen to represent them. And here I'm here to say that this is the time for us, that the cost is huge. The cost is just not universal health care. The cost is not just escalating gas prices, but the cost is gun lobbying. So I stand here today before you to ask you for your vote. You and I together, you and I will bring the 8th Congressional District to the floor of the U.S. Congress. Together, we will make a change. Let's create history. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our time is up for this forum. For further election information, please see the IllinoisVoterGuide.org, powered by the League of Women Voters of Illinois. This is 100% nonpartisan election information you need. A link to this recording will be located on each of the sponsoring League of Women Voters websites. Go to your local area league website for more information. We appreciate your participation. Whether you are a candidate or a voter, it's essential to preserving our freedom and our country. Please remember to vote, whether it is via vote by mail, early voting, or on Election Day. And now, please, let us all applaud the candidates.
He's not. I've never met the guy. I've never met the guy. I promise you. I've never seen him. I retweeted him. I've never met the guy. I've never seen the guy. I've retweeted him. You're wrong. You're wrong. It's pretty horrible what you guys did. You're wrong.